Hello.
Hello, Katya. Good evening.
Good evening, ma.
Can we start?
Yes, evening, colleagues. Hello.
I can hear you.
Good evening, sir.
Okay, I welcome to the class once again. We're going to start right away because one of our lead resource persons for tonight had to shift some other schedule to be here on time, so we're not going to keep her waiting for long. So we'll start. Others will join. Thank you. Yanga, over to you, ma.
Good evening, Katya. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Our presentation this night is going to be on customs. Please just permit me to share my screen first. Please let me know when you can see my screen.
Good.
Yeah, thank you. All right, thanks. Sorry, what am I trying to do? I'm trying to do slideshow. All right, so our presentation this evening is on NCS automation and customs procedure code, and also on NCS modernization. Please bear with me if I'm sounding very somehow. I just woke up. Oh God. All right, so please let me know if you can see my face so that it doesn't look like as if I'm talking to myself. Okay, so our presentation this night is on three things basically: NCS modernization, NCS automation, and customs procedure codes. So I'll be starting with NCS automation and customs procedure codes, while the next phase of the presentation will be on NCS modernization. Okay. So we're just going to cover legal provisions, NCS automations so far, and customs procedure code. Please, if you have any questions, just drop it in the chat box. After the session, we'll take all the questions that are available so that we can quickly rush up on the presentation slides. Okay, so on NCS automations, the parts of the NCS Act number 35, 2023 that covers automation and customs procedure is our section 22, which talks about the provision of information to the service. This is the section that talks about anyone that has to provide an information to the service, e.g., most especially declarants through their declarations. Section 23, which talks about the provision of information by the service. That is the service providing information either in electronic format, mostly in electronic format, to other stakeholders and relevant agencies. Section 25, which talks about exchange and storage of data. Section 27 talks about exchange of additional information. Section 28 talks about electronic system and the use of information technology. And Section 33, subsection 3, that talks about the establishment of an electronic data exchange facility, also known as the single window. So this table just shows us the automations that NCS has undergone since the time it started its reform and modernization journey. So we started with ASICUDA, which is a customs clearance system. We really don't have the date for that, but at the time, let's just say that automation started basically, let's say from 2000, let's say 2004 thereabout. But Ascoda Plus Plus was in 2006. And then the nicest, if we can remember, while we're still using Ascoda Plus Plus as the front end, NCS was using the nicest majorly for what's it called? Generation of reports. And that system was deployed in 2009. When the service discovered the shortcomings and the limitations of the Ascoda Plus Plus, it became apparent and paramount that the service needed to move to a more robust application. And that is when we came up, that was when the NICES 2 was deployed, which provided a web-based platform for traders to submit information, which is what we know as the trade portal. So I'm sure we can remember that. We know that the front end of the what's it called? Of the NICES 2 for these traders is the trade.gov.ng, which is the same platform that we're familiar with for PAR. And then the back end of it is the NICES 2 application that the service now uses, which is twm.ncs.gov.ng. So the front end that the trader uses is trade.gov.ng, and this was deployed in October 2016. And then we also had the e-emolument application, which has to do with the online submission of our yearly emolument forms. So this happened in December 2021, where the service no longer uses the paper documents for submission of our yearly emoluments. The next we have is the VIN valuation service. I don't know how many of us are familiar with what we call the VIN valuation service. So this came up in about March 2022, where agents no longer had to go and get manual valuation assessments for the importation of vehicles. But at the time when that service was deployed in March, there were issues and challenges with that because the system did not take into consideration the depreciation for used vehicles. So the system was only allowing declarants to impute values for used vehicles. So after that issue was identified, the service was brought down and it was properly fine-tuned, and it was now deployed on the 23rd of May 2022. So with this one, the system now took into consideration the 10% linear depreciation for used vehicles. So now its system allows declarants who are importing vehicles into Nigeria to declare their vehicles using their transaction values for used vehicles. So the clarification here is that the VIN valuation service is not a software. It is not an application. It is a service that runs at the back end of the system. So let me just give a brief description of how this service works. So for instance, an importer has imported a car, and the agent wants to make declaration on behalf of the importer. The declarant will go to the NICES application to try to make a declaration. When he's making that declaration, he will use the extended procedure code 4000. If it's for used vehicles, he will use 4100. And then use the additional code of financial regime 000. When he does this, he will now impute the VIN of that vehicle. If the VIN valuation service, which runs on a third-party VIN decoder database, cannot decode the VIN of that vehicle, it automatically means that that vehicle is now tagged a non-standard VIN. But if that data, if the VIN can be decoded in the NICE system and it populates the brand, the make, and the model of that car, it means that car is a standard VIN. And so the system can now allow the declarant to impute its transaction value. So I want to clear the myth that people think that the VIN valuation service gives value. No, the VIN valuation does not give value. You are expected to impute the value of your vehicle because of the transaction value agreement and because of the methods of valuations agreement. But because of the linear depreciation that has already been imputed in the system, you are not allowed to declare a value that is less than what the service has already calculated. Let me take that again. So the valuation policy for used vehicles, we know it is a 10% linear depreciation. So because the service has already calculated the expected value of a used car coming into the country, when the VIN decoder decodes the VIN of that car, so the system will now populate the brand, model, and the make. The agent can now proceed to impute his transaction value. But if the transaction value he claims he has is lesser than what valuation has calculated in the system will not collect it. So he has to impute higher or equal to the value that has been calculated by valuation in the depreciation value. But if if the system cannot decode that VIN, then that particular vehicle is tagged as non-standard VIN. So the agents will have to proceed to use the additional code 846. And for you to use 846, you now have to go and apply to the CAC to get the 846 approval documents. I'll explain that in the 846 application system. The next, so that is why there is no URL for the VIN valuation service. It is a service that runs at the back end of the system. Then the visitors registry is it's an online registration of visitors coming into the headquarters. So this particular system is hosted locally. So we do not have any longer in the headquarters registers, those registers that you take in the names of those coming in. Instead, they impute their details into the system and print out a little slip for them so that they can identify the flow that they are going to. And this was deployed in May 2022. Then the 846E application system. So at the time of deployment of the VIN valuation service, one of the parameters or one of the major requirements for you to be able to use the 846 is that the system must first of all, that's the NICE, must first of all generate an error message for you. That error message is the prerequisite for you to go and apply to use the 846. You cannot just proceed to use the 846 without the approval of the CAC. That's the Customs Area Controller. When you are now applying for the 846, you submit with your application letter, you submit the bill of lading, you submit the error message, and your vehicle registration certificate that is issued by the Federal Ministry of Finance. So when this process started, it was very cumbersome. There was a lot of craziness. And you have that on a regular, the area controller signs a lot of letters every day. Then you cannot imagine having to sign 846 approvals. In a day, for just that 846 for vehicles, you say he can sign about 400 letters. And that's excluding every other letter he has to sign and his own day-to-day running activities. So that was why the 846E application system came up. So the system was deployed 5th of December 2022 to help declarants to be able to submit these applications online real time. So the same thing you'd have submitted in the manual application, that's the VIN of the vehicles. If it's a containerized vehicle, you include the container number, the VINs, and any other additional item that you have in that particular container. And then when there's you've submitted that particular application, there are a set of officers called the review officers who will verify what you have submitted in line with what you have on your bill of lading in the system. After this has been approved, the valuation officers will now give value to that vehicle. So the 846 actually was also created so that two categories of vehicles will use that procedure code. The first is non-standard VINs, and the second is accidented or salvaged vehicles. So the idea of that was that because in the previous procedure, you already give a certain kind of rebate for accidented and salvaged vehicles, it was a no-brainer that when we are now doing, when the service deploys the 846, they should allow those particular sets of vehicles to also present their salvage certificates so that they can get a further rebate, even lesser than the used, vehicle value that the valuation would have given. But alas, valuation officers were not doing that. So you find out that the declarant decided that whether the accidented vehicle is standard, they will not even bother going to go and apply for 846. As far as the system can decode the VIN, don't worry, it's not accidented, because they discovered that the value that valuation was given to them was way even higher than what they should have gotten as accidented vehicles. So this system was first deployed in Tin Can as the pilot site, 5th December 2022. And the link is 846.nigeriatradehub.gov.ng. The next is the NCS modernization project. I will not talk so much about this because Buki is going to come and do a presentation about this later. The next we have is the revamp of the e-auction application. The e-auction application that we had before was deployed by WebFontaine. But because of the issues that the service was having, and the fact that the service needed to own that particular application, there was a revamp of the e-auction application, which was designed and developed by NCS officers. And it is now hosted on auction.nigeriatradehub.gov.ng. And this was deployed 16th of January. Then the next application we have is the AEO system. So as part of the achievements of the CGC, the implementation of AEO was one of the things that is part of his agenda to ensure trade facilitation in line with the priority advisory document of the president. And so the AEO system was one of the things that was developed to enable AEO statuses to be processed. So before anybody can be called or be given the AEO status or AEO certificates, which is based on two major statuses. The first one is the AEO simplified, and the second one is the AEO what's the other one? Simplified and security. You must submit your application through this AEO application, which is the aeo.nigeriatradehub.gov.ng. And this was deployed, the pilot actually was deployed 15th of April. Then the other one we have is the advanced rolling system. So this provides, oh, sorry, that was meant to be AEO, sorry. So this provides for the, traders to be able to submit applications for advanced rulings on either classification, origin, and valuation through an online platform. So instead of having them submit manual, manual requests or applications, a system was also developed so that this can be faster, easier, and more transparent. So the URL of that system is advancedruling.nigeriatradehub.gov.ng, which was deployed or launched on the 2nd of May. We also have the NCS Geospatial Intelligence. This is an application that helps to view or to see to have statistical view of location and number of seizures using satellite. And the URL is agiu.nigeriatradehub.gov.ng/ARCGIS. GIS means Geospatial Intelligence System, just in case. Then finally, we have the Retirement Verification System. This is a system that was deployed by the service. Mind you, all of this application that I just mentioned, excluding the NCS modernization projects, then ASICODA, NICES, VIM Valuation Service, are all deployed by NCS ICT officers. So the retirement verification system is a system for the verification of retirees from the rank of controllers, from the rank of controllers to CGC for their retirement benefits. So there's a certain retirement benefits that is given to retired controllers to CGCs quarterly. And then they always have to come every year for verification. So wherever you are, you physically go to the 4 zones and Abuja for your verification. And it's been quite stressful and cumbersome. And then looking at the security of the country, it was one of the complaints that the retirees made when they had their whatever with the CGC last year. So the CGC promised them they were going to have an application that would do that. So this was the system that was developed for it. And then the sensitization was done on the 22nd of April, 2024. Why there's no URL is because the system has not yet been deployed. So the application is just still in the development stage. But because the sensitization was something that was done and made public, that's why I included it into this application. So just in case it comes out, just know that the date of sensitization is 22nd of April 2024, and the system is called the Retirement Verification System. Yeah, so that's all about automation in the NCS so far from inception. The next thing I want to talk about now is customs procedure codes. This is in section 66 of the NCS, section 66 of the NCS Act. It says that goods presented to the service shall be placed under a customs procedure, except as otherwise provided. The declarant shall be free to choose the customs procedure for the goods, the conditions for that procedure, notwithstanding the nature, quantity, the country of origin, consignment, or destination of the goods. Can somebody mute? Thank you. Okay, so customs. Okay, thanks. Customs procedures is basically the measures applied by customs authority or a party to goods and to the means of transport that are subject to its customs laws and regulations. So basically what this is saying is that customs procedure is the measure that a customs authority will perform on a particular consignment that is within the customs territory. Customs declaration is an official document that lists and gives details of goods that are being imported or exported. In legal terms, a customs declaration is the act whereby a person indicates the wish to place goods under a given customs procedure So any goods that come into a customs territory must be accompanied by a declaration where the declarant is stating the particular procedure that he wants customs to undertake on that particular goods that is within the customs territory. Sorry, I don't know why my screen is hanging. Sorry, I don't know why this is hanging. It's not moving. Okay, I'm sorry, just give me a few minutes. Let me share the PDF version. Maybe that will work better. It's the PDF. Okay. Please let me know if you can see this one on my screen now.
Yes.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, we can see it.
All right. So the customs procedure codes are, first of all, they allow the use of one form of declaration for all types of procedures. So depending on the types of procedures that you have, you can do all of that on one form of declaration. I'm sure most of us are familiar with the declarations, and you see that under the box 37, you have the box 37 is attached to various items. So you have that on one particular declaration, you can have different types of procedures that can be applied. Then this is done to facilitate the provision of more detailed information. So when the idea is that when a custom officer sees the procedure code that has been used by the declarant, immediately the what's it called? The officer knows the particular action to be carried out on that particular declaration. And then it triggers the action in the system. As we go further, you understand what this means. And then the custom procedure code is actually an international coding structure. So it's not something that ACS just developed by themselves. No, it is an international coding structure. So what is this structure? So what is this structure? Please mute your mic. Thank you. Okay, so what's this coding structure? The coding structure is actually a 7-character code. So let's flash our minds back to an SGD, box 37. I'm sure you remember that there are 4 digits. So let's use 4,000, 4000, and then there are 3 digits, 000. So that is what makes the 7-character code. So that's what makes the customs procedure code. The first group of 2 numbers is called the requested code. This is customs methods of treatment of the goods that is being requested. And then the second group of 2 numbers is a previous procedure. This represents the previous customs procedure, if any, under which the goods were entered. So the requested procedure plus the previous procedure is what gives you the extended procedure code. If you have any questions, please don't forget to put it in the chat box. Thank you. Then the full CPC, the full customs procedure code must be entered in the box 37 of the new declaration. It also says that in addition, the special national situations such as rebates are managed by the use of a 3-character, which is called the national or the additional code. This is also referred to as a financial regime. This code states if the declaration could be charged with payment of duties and taxes and which ones would be paid. This is usually reflected on the tax base of the SGD. So for those that are in the field and work regularly with SGDs, I'm sure you can flash your mind back to seeing an SGD with certain procedure codes and seeing the tax base box and seeing what they are paying and what they're not paying. So this will help you to understand this better. So we have something called the model or type of the declaration. So this is this particular information is imputed into box 1. The entry types consist of a prefix which shows whether it is an import, export, excise entry, followed by the first number of the extended procedure code. For example, an import for home use would be import, IM, and then 4, which is for, what's it called? Home use, makes the model of declaration. That's why you have things like IM4, IM5, IM6, IM7, IM8, EXC9, which is excise declaration, EX1 for exportation, EX2 for temporary exportation. So this is why you have these things. They are all called the model or the type of the declaration. So what do they mean by requested procedure? So these are the list of the codes that you can have. So the permanent export is 10. So the procedures are mainly 2 digits number. Remember we said that before. So permanent export is 10. 21 is temporary export for return in same state. 22 is temporary export for outward processing or repair. 30 is re-export. 40 is home use, and so on and so forth, as you can see from 10 to 91. So this is called the requested procedure. Then you have what you call the previous procedure, which is actually the previous procedure in which that particular consignment was under the customs control. If it was under the customs control, that is why here you have 00, meaning no previous procedure was involved. But if you check under the requested procedure, you don't have 00 here, meaning for the requested procedure, it must actually have something that has happened before on that consignment. So you have 00, no previous procedure involved, 10 permanent export, 21 temporary exports, and so on and so forth. So now, really, what's the format of the customs procedure codes? Like I said before, it is the requested procedure plus the previous procedure, right? And the additional procedure. So for instance, here we have entry for home use. We all know that entry for home use is 4,000, and the national procedure, which is what we know as the common regime, is 000. So what makes that 4,000? The requested procedure is 40. 4 because it is for, what's it called? It is for home use, and 00 because it has not been entered into any customs procedure before. So let me just go back and show you what this is. So you can see that, let me start with here. This is a requested procedure. 40 means home use, right? And if you remember here, it tells us here under the model that the entry types consist of a prefix which shows whether it is an import, export, or whatever, followed by the first number of the extended procedure. So what we are doing is that to get an extended procedure code, it is a combination of the requested procedure, the previous procedure. Those 2 different digits are what gives you the extended procedure code, which is 4 digits. But then that 4 digits plus the 3 national or additional codes, or what we call financial regime, is what gives you the customs procedure codes, right? So the extended procedure code that we're trying to get now is 4,000, right? So IM4 is what makes it import from home use. So we have home use here to be not here. We have home use here to be 4,000, right? So it's a requested procedure. So what was the previous procedure? The previous procedure is that the goods has not even come under customs procedure, which is 000. That is why you have 40,000. That is how you come up with 4,000. And then 000 is the common regime. So the common, a common regime, yes, which is also called the national code or additional code or financial regime. So this determines why it's also called a financial regime, because it also determines the kind of taxes that will be paid on that particular declaration. And we all know that as far as you use 4,000, you are paying all your duty, you're paying all the duties and taxes, right? Then you have 40 plus 00. So that's what you have as home use. And then you now have the national procedure, which is 064, which is the entry of home use of goods rebated import for government by the government for military non-standard means. So the national procedure, like I said before, mostly works on rebates, right? Or government fiscal policy. So during the COVID, there were lots of procedure codes, a lot of national procedures that were introduced to allow for COVID materials to be imported into the country, whatever thing that had to do with COVID, nose masks and all those things to come into the country without the payment of duty, right? So those are the kind of things that we talk about as financial regime, national procedure, or additional procedure. So it is a combination of these numbers that gives you what you call customs procedure code. Because when a custom officer picks an SGD and goes to box 37, he knows the particular action that should be carried out on that particular transaction. And then the last example here is 40. That's a requested procedure, meaning this particular consignment is coming into home use, but the previous procedure for this was 5900, and 5900 was temporary importation into the free zone, right? So that they can pay duty on the raw materials that was imported with 4900 that did not allow them to pay duty, they will now have to use 4059 000. That is why you have it as entry for home use on goods made in a free trade zone. So putting all of this together is how we've come up with all of these extended procedure codes, right? So let's use for import, for instance, you have IM4, which is entry for home use. You have IM5, which is the temporary importation, IM6, which is re-importation, and IM7, which is entry for warehousing. So here you have, let's use 4051, which says entry for home use following temporary importation in same state. This is because 40 is entry for home use and 5100 is what TI in the same state. So I'm sure you now understand how these extended procedure codes come about. They are not just a fiction of somebody's imagination or where Fontaine just trying to give us numbers and whatever. It is actually an international coding structure. So what you have is the requested procedure, meaning as that SGD is being declared, what does the declarant want customs to do with that particular declaration? It means let's use 4100. 4100 is for home use, right? And 4 we already know that is home use, right? And then 4100 is a standard for used goods, and 00 means that no prior action has been carried on this particular transaction. So 4100 means that this particular transaction is going to be treated as used items, right? So imagine you now have for a vehicle, you have 4100, and then you have 064. We already know that 064 is non-standard VIN for for military hardware. So when the military is importing used vehicles, whether used or new vehicles, they already have a procedure code which is 406, which is the military hardware, right? But so that the system can accommodate when they're importing vehicles, right, which can either fall into standard or non-standard. it was now created for them 064, which is just switching their numbers from 406 to 064. So that is non-standard bin for military hardware. So when you see that kind of declaration, you know that it is the military that is importing either a used vehicle or a new vehicle, depending on what is being used. And also for what's it called? For the rebates, that's for the financial regimes or the national codes. You also know that some kind of the documents are also required to back up some of these declarations and claims to use these particular financial regimes. So this is also for the export. This is just part of the export. So here you have for the declaration model for export, you have EX1, which is exportation, EX2, which is temporary export, and then EX3, which is re-export. Remember that we said 3,000 is what? Re-export of goods. So imagine now you have, so let's look at 30, 40. 3,000 is already re-export of goods, right? And 40 is importation for home use. So 30, 40 will now be what? Re-export after import for home use. So it means that the requested procedure on this particular declaration is 30, and the previous procedure on this declaration was what? Home use. So it means that this particular SGD already had an item that was imported into Nigeria, but now they want to re-export that item. So what that declaration is doing now is that re-export has to call the import declaration for home use of that particular item, right? So that it can the system can link what was done before on that declaration and what is coming on that declaration. So that's basically the concept of the extended procedure code and how it is being created. So it is created using an international structure so that the system or the custom officer can understand the particular action to carry out on a particular transaction. So if you look at 3052, 3052 is saying, we already know that 52 is temporary import for process and repair, right? So what the system is doing here now is that it's telling you that the requested procedure that we want to do now is to re-export a particular TI that was already imported for process and repair. So the requested procedure is 30, which is exports. That is what re-export, that's what you want to perform. But the previous procedure was that thing was already temporarily imported. So that 30 has to call for that 52 so that you can have a full action to be carried out on that particular transaction. The same also works for what's it called? For transit. These are the other ones for temporary imports in same states, re-import, that's IM6. I'm sure we all know now that for the, what's it called? For import into the free zone, they no longer use 7,900. They now use 5,900 so that the enterprise can pick the raw materials into the free zone. And then when manufacturing has been done, production has been completed, and they need to pay on those raw materials, the system, so what they do now is that the system now needs to call for that 5,900 because they want to pay duty on that raw material. So it's now going to go import for home use, meaning for it to be home use, it means you want to pay duty on it. So that 50, which is 40, which is the requesting procedure, will call for the 5,900 that was used to carry that raw material from the port to the free zone so that you can pay duty, right? So that is how the system works. That is how the customs procedure codes work. So for you to have a complete customs procedure, it has to be 7 digits, which is 4 digits, right? Which is 2, the requesting procedure, 2, the previous procedure, and 3, which is the national codes, or what we call additional codes, or what we call financial regime, which explains if that particular transaction should pay duty or the rebate that has been given for such consignment. So these are the examples of the additional codes. So additional codes actually don't have a particular what's it called? They don't have a particular like the requested or the requested no. They're just codes that are formulated by by that particular customs administration to be able to assign codes for certain groups of people that the country has said will not pay duty or will pay duty depending on what the category is. So for instance, for the president, you have 400, right? So because of the introduction of the VIN valuation system that gave rise to standard and non-standard VIN, obviously cars will be imported for the president that will be non-standard. So how do you handle that particular declaration? So a national code was created, which is 004. So it's just switching the 400 that is for the president on general goods, which is now 004 for non-standard VINs for the president, right? So we have diplomatic privileges, which is 401. And then for them to bring in non-standard vehicles, you have 014. So when you go through the procedure codes that you have, you'll be able to understand how they flow, right? So they flow from the president to diplomatic to the consular to donors, personal effects, life-saving appliances, the military, arms and ammunition, frames and all that. So it helps you to understand better how this particular codes and financial regimes are being used and implemented. So it's all of this that makes up what we call the customs procedure code. And the 4-digit ones are what we call the extended procedure code. So that's the 4059, the 1081, and all that. With this, I've come to the end of my presentation. If you have any questions, let's take it down before we hand over to the next presenter. Thank you for your attention. Yeah, go to chat.
Thank you so very much. This is very, very insightful. Okay, are we taking the questions now?
Yeah, I think we should just take these questions now. Oh, someone said, can I be louder? Please, I hope you heard me at the end of the day. Can you change? Ah, sorry. Okay.
Marianne, there's only one question you have from
Oh, okay.
Mina. Since the inception of VIN valuation, has there been any
updates?
Yes.
Updates. When you say updates, what do you mean by updates? Update on what exactly? When you say updates, what do you actually mean by updates? Can you hear me? Okay, Gomino, let me. Okay, yeah, I'm muted. Mustafa, Gomino, okay. Okay, so I think we are good to go. Based on your question on updates, I know that the only thing that was one of the issues at the time of deployment of the VIN valuation was that the system could only give the system could only decode the VIN to give you make, brand, and model. But one of the very important things that the system needed to have was the trim of the vehicle. And when I say trim, it's talking about, like, for instance, you're importing a Toyota Corolla. So the system wants to know, are you importing a Corolla limited edition, sports edition, just an ordinary edition, or whatever it is? Or if it's a Camry, are you importing an XE or an XSE, an SE and LE and all that? The system doesn't do that yet. I don't know if that has been inputted into the system for now. I have not gone into NICES to check any of that, but I know that's a major update that's meant to have been done. So I don't know if that has been done yet. Someone says, question 2, how possible is it to bypass the 846? Because most declarations now you see the bill of lading does not have any vehicle description, but the declaration has an extended procedure code 846. The bill of lading does not have any vehicle description, but the declaration has extended procedure code 846. Okay, so what you also need to understand that this procedure code, this see, we just had this class, and you're telling me extended procedure code is 846. No, Gomino, extended procedure code is not 846. It is national additional code that is 846, not extended procedure code. The extended procedure code that would have been used is 4100 or 4000. So if they use the additional code 846, one of the major things that the system requires is that you must attach the 846 CAC's approval, which is always attached in document code 125. So for those that use the system, when you open a particular STD, go to the attachment document. When you go there, you see, especially for vehicles, there are majorly two documents you see there. 094, which is the vehicle registration certificate, and the 846 approval document. If you see the 846 approval document, it means that that particular STD must have a, what's it called, a VIN. And also remember, for you to use 846, it means it has been attached. The 846, what's it called? Additional code is actually attached to, there's a way they linked it to, what's that thing called? The HS code, right? It's 703. So you cannot be importing general cargo, right? Okay, no, it's not attached to the VIN. Sorry, it's not attached to the VIN. So one of the issues that we have, right, is when you see general cargos in the containers, right? Just like you said in the bill of lading, but they have gone to go and use 846. But if you check the body of that STD, they did not declare clothes and put HS code for clothes and then go and use what's it called? And then go and attach 846. Do you understand? What they have done is that they have used 703, right? And they have gone to go and collect value from valuation. And they have gone to attach the 846 approval into the NICES. So this lies on the onus of the examination officers. Because you cannot tell me that because you are just seeing documents, right? You have gone for physical examination. You did not see car inside the container, or you did not see car in the terminal. Then you now come and approve that it is, what's it called? It's car that is there. 1, 2, the bill of lading is already there. And that is why I said that one of the documents that you must submit for 846 approval to be given is the bill of lading. And every review officer who validates and approves an 846 application must first of all verify that what he has submitted in his bill of lading is the same thing that is on NICES. If the review officer approves that particular application, knowing fully well that what on the bill of lading is not what he has already applied for in the, 846 application, and it goes to valuation. Valuation also has access to the bill of lading, and they decide to open that application and assign value to that particular vehicle that is not on the bill of lading. What do you think will happen? The agent would say that custom does not know his work because the bill of lading I submitted to you is fake. And it is not the bill of lading that I submit to you that I meant to use to validate. The bill of lading has already been submitted on NICES. So plus the review officer, plus the valuation officer who went ahead to assign value and approve an application that does not have vehicle on the bill of lading on NICES. Please, what do you want me to say about that kind of thing? Oga, answer your question. Question 3, which units in
Hello, Marianne.
NCS? Yes.
Can we just let's the questions we suspend it for now. Let's Buki continue her class because of time, and then some of the questions we'll answer it in the chat group there. So we'll just go
Okay,
ahead
okay,
and
okay.
answer it in the chat. Let Buki start her class, please.
All right, thank you. So thank you very much for your attention.
Why not we
Buki.
answer the ones that are already there, Abba? Let's answer the ones that are already there. Then we can now go with that your suggestion. If question has been posed already, and you make this suggestion, it's a good suggestion. But let's just answer the ones that are there. Then every other one will wait at the end of the class. I think that will be so that we don't keep people.
Okay,
that
so we
ask.
just have 2 questions, so I'll just answer that as fast as possible. So any other question that comes after this PVD will be answered after Buki's presentation. All right, so this question says, which units in NCS are responsible to assign or handle procedure code? Is it ICT or TNT? So first of all, I've debunked that first of all, because procedure code, like I said before, is an international standard, right? So what happens is that when a procedure has been requested, so the major thing that happens is that, for instance, maybe there's a fiscal, what's it called? Help me, a government fiscal policy, right? That says we should do something, right? So the request comes from T&T if it has to do with trade and tariff, right? If it has to do with excise and free trade zone, it comes from excise. So those 2 departments have the mandate to send to NCS their requests. So what they request of us is to tell ICT that we do not want this certain group of people to pay this, or we want this certain group of people to pay this but not to pay this. Implement this procedure in the system, right? So the interpretation of the request of that procedure is what now gives rise, most especially, to the extended procedure codes or to the national codes, depending on what needs to be done. So let me use the excise, for instance. We know formally we used to use 7900 for entry into free trade zone, right? Abba, please, I'll need somebody else to help me with this, but let me just give this explanation. It used to be 7900, but they now then there was a revised procedure that should be done for the excise, where it was said that where the raw materials are being imported through the port, they should now start using 5900. Do you understand? But remember that 9 is for excise. If you go back to the presentation, you see that EXC is for excise. 5 is for what's it called? Temporary importation. So for them to be able to actualize that temporary import into free trade zone, what did they do? They went and carried the 5 of TI and the 9 of excise. Remember that I said that this is an international standard coding structure. So that is how you have 5900. Remember that 00 means that nothing has already happened on this particular transaction. But when after manufacturing has been done in the free trade zone, you now need to pay on that what's it called? On that what's that thing called? On the raw materials. That is when they now decided to use what? 4059, right? Which is requesting for an home use application to be done on that declaration, calling an temporary imported item that went into the free trade zone. So that is how they came up with 4059. That is how they came up with what? 5900. So what happens is that there is already a standard, international standard coding structure. So when the request comes from either T&T or from excise, right, we will now, at the ICT unit through Webfontaine, will now use those coding structure to come up with the appropriate extended procedure codes. Do you now understand the difference between the answer that I'm trying to give here? Thank you very much. The last question says, what is the procedure code for PUBD? Now that we have had this lecture, please ask that question properly. When you say the procedure code, are you asking for the 7 digits, or are you asking for the 3 digits, or are you asking for the 4 digits? Thank you very much. Buki, you have the floor.
Yanga baby.
Bye-bye, Ibrahim. All right, so I'm going to share the screen. Buki, I'll share the screen for you now.
Thank you, Marian. So as you have heard, Yanga baby, anybody that wants to apply, just see me. Marian will be waiting for you so that we can start. Okay, in case you want to do Yanga on the slide, no problem. Good evening, everyone.
Sorry, I'm coming. Just give me a few minutes. Sorry.
Okay,
Let me
thank you.
open your own on PDF so that I'll just use the PDF. All right.
You know I told you to do something, right?
Oh, shoot, I've not done it. Sorry. I'll just be talking. Let me quickly do it.
Okay. I'll be talking on NCS modernization project, which everybody formerly know as e-customs project. So let's just agree that the name has changed. The name is not e-customs project, it's NCS modernization project. The reason being that the SPV actually changed along the line. So the first SPV we had actually came up with the name e-customs project. And for an SPV, an SPV is a registered entity that will drive a project. So if the SPV is changing, you cannot now keep the name that somebody named it in their own, contract, and now change the body, but you want to retain the name. So that's the reason why we cannot call it e-customs again. We have to call it NCS modernization project because it was registered under another entity. So it's just like a patent rights, IP, everything. So they've carried their own e-customs. Now we need to collect our own NCS modernization project. So please don't confuse it with the name of your concessionaire, which is Trade Modernization Project. So a lot of people want to ask me about the project, and most times they'll say, Buki, how far with the trade modernization? You're asking about it's just like you're seeing me and asking Buki. Instead of you to say, Buki, how far with NICES? You now say, Buki, how far with Fontaine? There are two different questions. So your concessionaire is Trade Modernization Project Limited, and the project name is NCS Modernization Project. So on that note, Marian, are you ready? If not, I have
Yes,
to.
I am. I'm ready.
Sorry, before you start, maybe you can just explain what SPV is quickly so that everybody will be on the same page with you. Thank you, ma.
You have to look for trouble. Okay, so as I said, SPV is special purpose vehicle. Usually, special purpose vehicle are entities, registered entities in a country to help to drive a project, especially a project that is public-private partnership model. So, does that answer your question?
Please say it again.
Elaborate more.
Entity.
Yes, elaborate more.
Nice try. SPV, I said, is a registered entity in a country, and they are there for you to help you to drive a project. In terms of NCS modernization, the SPV is there to provide like the financial support. They are to provide like the project financing, risk management. They are to provide assets. They are to provide infrastructure. So that's what an SPV does. SPV is there to help you drive a project. So they might not necessarily know how to deliver the project, but they are to bring the experts that will help you deliver the project. Do you understand? So as I said, it's a registered entity. They are legal entity governed by law. So they actually have their own. It's just like you open a company right now, any company you open. So that's the way an SPV is. They actually have legal backing. They operate solely for a project. So an SPV, if this contract, we said the concession we said is 20 years, right? The SPV, trade modernization, if this contract should expire like in 20 years' time, they cannot continue existing in the 21st year. So they last as long as that project is valid. Okay, let me put it that way. As long as the project is valid, they are valid. And they are there to help you to drive a project. They are called special purpose vehicle, and it's a legal entity for them to help you. So in the process of, in the case of Nigeria Customs Service now and the NCS Modernization Project, the SPV is providing all the financial support that we need. So Customs is not dropping any financial value, let me say. What we are bringing to the table is the ideas of we officers, our brains and our body and the manpower. We're bringing that to the table. However, they are bringing the financial backing, the IT, the technical expertise, a lot of things to the table. That's what they're bringing. So do you understand?
Are they charity organizations? Are they kind of please
No,
clarify?
I said they are bringing financial support. It's not charity. Because of my presentation, you get to understand that they have dropped a sum of money and they need to recoup their money. Do you understand?
Exactly.
Okay, thank you, Buki.
You have an obligation to cover, and that's what the concession agreement is there for, to state their obligations in terms of the contract, in terms of the agreement, sorry. It is not a contract. In terms of the agreement, they have an obligation, and Customs also has an obligation. So their obligation here is what I try to explain, and you understand more about the obligations when I present. Is that okay?
Thank you.
Sorry, Buki, please, can you give us just one example, a name?
Hello.
Sorry, I now had to present. Is in the presentation.
The presentation, it was because she was waiting for Miriam to set the slide, and she mentioned SPV. So I wanted her to just explain that before we start. So Buki, go ahead so that the questions will come much later. Thank you.
So
please, let's understand with her. Thank you.
The first thing first, you said example, right? The project itself, NCS Modernization Project, is an example of the SPV. Good. So NCS Modernization Project is a 20-year concession agreement with Trade Modernization Project Limited. As I've said, the guarantor here is Nigeria Customs Service. Before now, with Webfontaine, the grantor was Federal Ministry of Finance, but we had to fight legally for us to be able to sign on behalf of Nigeria Customs Service, considering Nigeria Customs Service is still under the Ministry of Finance. So this contract was actually signed and executed by the Nigeria Customs Service Board. But because the board is a legal entity of its own as well, we were able to use the Comptroller General to execute the agreement. So it was a decision that was made, and lucky for us, we can actually make decisions concerning the NCS Modernization Project while carrying the minister along, of course. So the grantor is Nigeria Customs Service Board, and the concessionaire is Trade Modernization Project Limited. So somebody has also asked me, why am I saying that they are TMP, not TMPL? So when they're registering their company, they registered this as straight TMP as the short form. They left the limited after. So that's the reason why you have seen it in the presentation like this. So most times you try to use what is referred to in the concession agreement, because whenever there is a court case, if you change it to TMPL and legally they are known as TMP, which means you're talking about a different entity. So it's good for you to just get used to their name so that you don't actually get it wrong at the end of the day. So that is just the background of the project. And then, Miriam, please, if you can go to the next slide, please. Yes, in terms of approvals for this project, it has been on for a long time. I've been hearing about the project since 2016. We've started like the feasibility study, but not until 2018, the president gave the first directive, which he used in, the president keyed into the project. So we call it a presidential directive. And in that letter, president made us to understand that it has now become one of his initiatives. So he responded by saying it is a presidential initiative, adopting the project as very important, of course, to the economy. So that letter was written on the 8th of June, 2018. Now, what the letter says is for Nigeria Customs Service to work with ICRC So that letter, by the way, was not addressed to Nigeria Customs Service. It was addressed to ICRC. And ICRC is Infrastructure Concession Regulatory Commission. So all SPV projects in Nigeria is managed by ICRC. All PPP projects for government is managed by ICRC. So they are Infrastructure Concession Regulatory Commission. So they are in charge of this project. So the president wrote them and told them that they should work with Nigeria Customs Service, engage us in order for us to come up with the full diligence of the SPV. So they need to work with us, ask us, who is your SPV? Now they will now validate those SPV if they are capable, which means they are checking if they are financially buoyant enough to handle it and if they have the expertise. Now, second condition, President told them that they should work with us and conduct full negotiations, drafting the concession agreement and the full business case for the project. That means the president wants to know what is the concept note. What exactly do you want to do? The full business case end to end, the president wants to know about it. And then they want a draft of the concession agreement. So we went ahead and started working with them in 2018. And it took a long time, but we got the first draft of the agreement done. And most of you are aware that, yes, people will say we had FEC approval in 2020. Yes, we got the first FEC approval, but it was an interim approval. And the approval was for us to send the concession agreement, that means the draft concession agreement, to the Attorney General of the Federation, because he has to give a sign-off on that concession agreement. So we took that, and then in light of what they also recommended was for the Controller General of Nigeria Customs Service to actually look into the SPV again. Based on that directive in 2020, we went further to look at the agreement. A lot of amendments was made in 2021. And then in 2022, the Attorney General of the Federation actually gave his approval on Valentine's Day. So you can say that Nigeria Customs Service was valid. 14th February 2022, he gave his approval. And 27th February 2022, this approval that he gave, and ICRC's directive, because, you know, remember we're supposed to work with ICRC. ICRC wrote to Mr. President, telling him about the approval, telling him about the SPV that has been formed, telling him about the parties that make up the SPV and what the agreement has been reached. So on the 27th of May, 2022, the president sent an approval that we should go ahead and execute the concession agreement. So 30th May, 2022, the agreement was executed. Now, SPVs are very funny. When you execute an agreement, that is not yet final. So the person that you execute, because an SPV, everybody has their own money, right? And they are bringing their money to the table. But the question is, for them to put that money, not just in a bank, but for them to put that money in Nigeria Customs Service name in a bank. But you can see that we started the journey in 2018. Nobody will keep that kind of money in Nigeria Customs Service name since 2018 and be waiting for us in 2022. It's not possible. So what they do in SPV is, upon executing the agreement, you will now give them a certain number of, as a time frame, for them to bring the money to the table. So the president, along with his approval, sent us a letter, which is with the legal advisor presently, that the concessionaire has a total of 180 days for them to reach financial close. So this financial close is one of the condition precedents of the agreement. If you don't reach financial close, even though we've executed the agreement, it can become null and void after 180 days. And that's why you hear about the $300 million. You've been hearing about it. Yes, the money is supposed to be the first tranche that they should achieve in the first 180 days. So they were able to put this money in the bank after 128 days. So 128 days from the day we signed gives you 28 September That was the day we confirmed. So they validated, I think, on the 24th, but we confirmed it on the 28th of September 2022, that this money has been dedicated and set aside for Nigeria Customs Service Modernization Project in the bank. So that makes the date of your confirmation for that financial close your commencement date for the project. So it was actually an agreement, and a letter was written to that effect. Since they've confirmed it, the presidential directive was approved, and they agreed that 28th of September 2022 becomes the commencement date for this project. In other words, they've been collecting their money since the 28th of September 2022. So even though you might say you did not see a plot of land that day, yes, they are collecting their money, because an agreement is an agreement. They've kept the money in the bank because of you. So you have to start paying back small. Then Nigerians will say that even though you have presidential approval, or legally, they'll tell you, even if you have presidential approval, yes, you have all the approvals. Presidential approval is like the highest thing you can have. But at the end of the day, there can still be a form of legal content, argument or something that, yes, you did not ratify presidential approval. So 18th April 2023, we actually went for ratification of the approval of Mr. President, and we got it 18th April 2023, which makes it the final approval that you could have gotten, the highest of it all that we could have gotten for the project, which makes it valid right now. So if anybody sues us right now, we're in trouble. Then you have 1st June 2023. So the idea was to start coming up with project teams and everything, but we needed a working space. There was no working space. There was plenty friction in government and everything. So we did not do anything until after June. Let me see. The project did not really kick off until after June. So when we got a working space in project management office, that means in management quarters, management quarters, that's where the project office is located. Most of you attended the inauguration or the launching ceremony. Next page, Marianne. Nice. So in as much as we have the concession agreement, which I'll talk more later on, we also have our NCS Act that governs the project. First, we'll look at Section 22, which gives us power for provision of information, which is traders submitting information to the public. We need to get information, as we know, we need to get this data, which becomes wealth from the public. So this gives us the power to collect information from people. 23 permits us to share information to other agencies and other stakeholders. 25 talks about exchange and storage of data. 27 talks about exchange of additional information. We have 28, which actually governs most of what we want to achieve in the UCMS, which is one of the models to be, or one of the deliveries or deliverables of the NCS modernization project. And we have 30, which talks about custom control. So the fact remains that they are not just going to bring about some software, they're also going to bring in hardware. So we have 30, which supports some of this. We have 33, which strictly talks about the establishment of an electronic facility for exchange of data, single window. And we have 59, which talks about examination of goods at the examination bay. It's specifically one of the subsections there talks about the scanners, which is one of the deliverables as well for this project. Next slide. Yep. We know that it's a public-private partnership project, as I try to write here, and I've already said that it is going to be driven by the SPV. The SPV in this context is now the TMP. So TMP is now the SPV. So usually before you draft the agreement, or when you're drafting the agreement, it's always written SPV. But by the time you constitute your SPV and it gets an approval, because we actually wrote Mr. President about the team that was going to be in the SPV, and he gave his approval. So upon his approval, they can now go and open a company in that name. So it's actually has its own process as well. So upon presidential approval for the names of people that are in the SPV, they got that approval and then they were able to open a company in that name. So if you check CSU right now, this name TMP, you will not see it existing until April. Yes. Until April 2023, there was no name registered as TMP until April 2023. And it will be so until the 20 years elapses, and then they have to close it because it is strictly for the project. So an example of the SPV, companies that are under SPV, TMP is an SPV on its own. So you actually have them as the solely and exclusively responsible for the compliance of both the legal and for the fiscal liabilities of the project, because they actually have what is called performance bond. So there's a bond that they have to keep in the bank every year. So this bond is renewable at the end of every year, at the end of every phase, sorry. So at the end of every phase, we can actually go and claim this money if we feel that they have not done what they're supposed to do in that phase. If they don't reach what they're supposed to do, if they're supposed to deploy 50 scanners at the end of 6 years, which is the first phase, and they deployed only 45, then we can go to the bank and collect this money and use it to purchase the remaining scanners that they did not buy. So it is left for NCS officers to actually do their duty by monitoring exactly what they're supposed to do and what exactly they have done. So the picture on the right actually shows the concession agreement that was being signed, and it actually shows the people and parties to the SPV and the people that actually executed the concession agreement. So you have the people on the far right, you see pictures of the lady, and then the man in the face mask with the purple tie, that's your legal advisor, the head of your 8th department. And then you have the other person in mask to be the chairman of CMP. I think the legal is also beside his legal advisor is beside him. No, sorry, that is the present ICRC director, Dr. Jobson Ewalefo is the present ICRC director right now. So, and then you have Colonel retired Ahmed Ali signing on behalf of NCS with our legal advisor, who is representing the Minister of Justice of the Federation. Next slide, please. So we actually hit a bit of rough patch in terms of executing the agreement. Shortly after we signed the agreement, we were called into a case. And the case, they sent us a court order on the 17th of June, 2022. And luckily, the court order, what it means was that you stop everything you are doing. Court order means put a hold on it. So there are different types of court order, but this particular one that they gave us, it was don't do anything again. In fact, don't carry a pen. Don't even do anything. So we had to write and tell them that Nigeria Customs Service is a revenue generating agency, and we actually bring money to the coffers of Nigeria. Stopping us from working actually is stopping the federal government from generating revenue. So luckily, because of our inputs to trade and everything, this expatriate order was actually lifted 22nd of July 2022, allowing us to commence with the operations of preparing for the commencement of the project. And then we have our next court hearing 8th of June. On the 8th of June, I would like to tell you that 8th of June, they actually passed another order that they were ready to withdraw the case from the court. So that is why I left it there. 8th of June, they gave us the good news that they were withdrawing. They want to settle out of court. So the case is actually in the process of leaving the court right now because they have agreed to settle out of court. Congratulations, Nigeria Customs Service. Next slide. Objectives of the project. So the objectives of the project is a lot, but we've tried to group it into 5 distinct points. So there will be development and deployment of automated systems in Nigeria Customs Service. There will be improvement of our administrative systems and other platforms, effective integration with other stakeholders, and capacity building. Then we have management and maintenance of the deployed system for the duration of the concession. Next slide. We all understand that Nigeria Customs Service function is moving from the traditional way of doing things, and everybody is moving ahead, so deploying new technology. We have our experts in the house, I'm sure, on cybersecurity. They will tell you what is going on there. We have people that decide, no, they want to be flying drones. for border surveillance and everything. So everybody is actually moving and everything is evolving. And Nigeria Customs Service, we seem to have been stagnated for a while, probably due to the fact that we have a service provider that was not ready to move forward, or I don't know. But the question remains that we have taken this step, and I'm hoping that is a positive step that will lead us to a much better future. Next slide. So the concession agreement, the Nigeria Customs Service Modernization Project, is actually governed by the concession agreement, which is just one book of 180 something pages, I think 186 pages, and 13 appendixes. So the appendixes ranges from the areas, the sites to be covered. It covers the business process documentation. It covers the network infrastructure. It covers capacity building plan. It covers sustainability plan. We have the marine deployment. We have the geospatial deployment, which is the geosurveillance. We have the e-enforcement. We have the video conferencing. So all these are part of the appendixes. And most importantly, I try to tell people that the best appendix that I like is Appendix H. Appendix H talks about responsibility matrix. It tells us what the concessionaire should do and what customs should do. So which in a long way, like in a very long way, it actually empowers Nigeria Customs Service to be able to do a lot. So that is what is governing us to be able to deploy the project. And the definition, if you want, for the NCS modernization project, you can say is an integration of applications, platforms, hardware involving all-in-one nationwide import-export. If you want to add transit to it, please do import-export transit management system. So what we're looking at is an end-to-end automation of all our processes. But of course, we cannot do it all at once. So it's a gradual process, and we hope we'll get there in due course. Next slide. So this is like a structure of the project's implementation. So you have Nigeria Customs Service Board, as I said earlier, is signed by the board. We have the PSC, which is made up of 9 members, 2 members from the TMP, and we have 4 members from Nigeria Customs Service. The chairperson of the PSC, sorry, I keep on saying SPV, for the PSC is the Controller General of Customs. And the secretary is ACG ICT. Then, but the both of them, the beauty about it is the 2 of them, they are non-voting members, because the concessionaire only has 2 representatives. So it's only the 2 members, the other 2 DCGs of NCS that can be voting members in case they want to reach a quorum. So you also have representative of Federal Ministry of Justice, which is NCS legal advisor. And you also have representative of the ICRC. So that gives our 9 members, if I'm not mistaken. Independent experts, sorry, should be one of them, making 9. So then you have Nigeria Customs Service, and then you have TMP. TMP has the, of course, under them, you have the project management office presently that we have, and then you have the different departments that are also structured there. We have about 50-something officers presently deployed in that office to work with them. And Nigeria Customs Service also have the PIC, and then we also have internal project working group. So these are internal project working group. They're already working in different capacities with the TMP in order for us to deploy the project. We have independent experts, and then we have quality assurance. In terms of independent experts and quality assurance, the independent expert is actually, you can say, is a party that we have engaged in the capacity of a consultant. So the independent expert, they are professionals in their skills, in their field, sorry, and they are knowledgeable people that we've engaged to be advisors. So you can say that the CGC might need to talk to someone. Okay, we want to do maybe marine deployment right now. You need expert to talk to, maybe to just exchange dialogue with. These people are not supposed to be strictly for customs. They're not strictly for the concessionaire. So they are supposed to be in the middle, on the fence. So if we decide now that, oh, we want 70 scanners, we want 10 to be in Apapa port. Okay, let's talk to experts. What do they think? What is their, what do they feel? So just not to be biased. So we have the independent experts. That's why they are called independent experts. So they are independent of both parties. However, their role is to be unbiased in giving the assessment whenever we reach maybe a confusing dialogue. So they are experts to give advice. They are there to give advice to the CGC, to the ACG ICT, to members of the PSC, to NCS in general. They are there for advice purpose. And then we now have the quality assurance team as well. They are also professionals in their field, but they are there to validate the standard. They are there to establish standard and quality. For example, the cybersecurity people, they are deploying and they are telling you, I think, sorry, cybersecurity, Ozams, if you can hear me, is it yours that is 2700 or 3100 ISO something? So you have also risk management that will tell you that, I think theirs is the one that is 30 something, 31,000 or something, ISO 31,000. So you have these standards out there, and these people need to ensure that whatever we're deploying is in line with these ISO standards out there. So they are there to check the quality of the work at the end of the day. So remember, independent expert is at the beginning of the project telling you what to do, how to do it. Okay, should we deploy Apapa first, or should we deploy Kinkan first, or no? Okay, should we do iGate here? Should we not put iGate here? They're helping you in terms of the business process and the flow of things and how you get it done. Whereas the QA is looking at you doing everything, because at the end of the day, they are coming to help you in terms of system testing. They will come and test whatever you've done to ensure that it meets up with standards. It meets up with the defined standard that you want to achieve at the end of the day. So they will also look at it that, yes, you brought in an OEM. Okay, everything is supposed to be new. This particular products, no, you cannot use old one. Why did you use old products? No, you cannot bring in used item. You can't bring in a used computer. You have to bring in a new one. You have to use this type of piping. You have to use this type of security doors for the database or for the data center. So at the end of the day, they check the quality of what you have done in order to ensure security, in order to ensure optimal performance. So they are there to also render their professional expertise in terms of this capacity. So next slide. The project scope. The project scope and the timeline for the project is 20 years, as I've said. So you have year 1 to 6, which makes up the first phase, year 7 to 12, which makes up the second phase, and 13 to 20, which makes up the third phase. The beauty about it, so at this point, I'll talk a bit about the concession agreement. The concession agreement is actually governing everything we do in terms of this project. It not only empowers us to be able to terminate as at when due, or it does not give us, it does not actually hold us down. So it actually empowers Nigeria Customs Service, because as drafted in the concession agreement, from the third phase, beginning of the third phase, we begin to plan the transition. The handback will start from the 13th year. And as I've said, every phase of the project, they have a performance guarantee bond, which is already in the bank, and the legal unit is mandated to enforce that that bond is valid throughout the phase of the project. So if they don't deliver, we have something to fall back on. Right now, Nigeria Customs Service is having a lot of issues in terms of transition. A lot of services are going down. I know some of you saw that the portal was down yesterday. So it's because of subscription. So a lot of things are actually going wrong that they shouldn't go wrong. So transition period, there should be funding for transition period. And in case of default, you don't really need to write to them. You should have something to fall back on in order to ensure a smooth transition. So the concession agreement actually governs us a lot. In terms of our data is protected. We also have a lot of services that the project is supposed to deliver for us, which we have started, but of course the work is still far from being completed. So we started last year, but ideally we should have started September 2022, but we got a late start. We didn't start until June 2023. And right now we are over a year into it, and we're still working on getting the software done. Some of you in some of the commands would have seen that the team has come around to your commands, and they're trying to put some things in place, especially in the CPCs. But the project cannot fully kick off because right of way needs to be given for most of the sites to be fully functional. So that is a bit about it. And then you also, Marianne, can we go to the next slide so that I don't explain the benefits here? Okay, yes. So key components of the project, we actually have a lot that the project is doing for us. Please don't mind the fact that this e-customs is there. Ozamere designed it, we loved it, and we left it there. So thank you for your design. Ozams, you can design another one saying NCS modernization. We'll gladly take it. So we have enhanced clearance process and paperless customs. We have the electronic cargo tracking. We have risk control center. So the electronic cargo tracking, there's a lot of new gadgets that we're bringing into the project. Body cameras for us to be able to track our personnel wherever they are, not just the cargo itself, but we can also track our officers in terms of mobile enforcement as well. So you can not just only track cargo, track the people that are following the cargo and track the people that are even doing the inspection. Depending on what customs decide on what they want to use most of these gadgets for, they can decide when it comes on board. We have the risk control center, first of its kind, that will be deploying a risk control center in headquarters, not just in headquarters, but there will be a risk control center in all zonal offices, which means we have 5 risk control center in total. The risk control center will be managed by risk management officers. It will also be managed by geospatial specialists in order for them to be able to help our officers, our enforcement officers in the field in terms of using drones and everything to help ensure that we keep our borders very secured. And of course, this will help us to monitor the lives of our officers in the field when they are going on patrol as well. As I said, there's body cams for officers to wear at every point in time. We also have the non-intrusive inspection. The non-intrusive inspection is bringing a total of 67 scanners into Nigeria Customs Service borders and stations. So we have mapped out the deployment of the scanners. We have the first 6 of the scanners which will be getting into the country before the end of the year, hopefully. Then we have the marine surveillance, marine border and air surveillance infrastructure. There's also need for us to upgrade that, but this is not coming until the second phase of the project. But most of everything we're seeing here is going to be deployed in the first phase of the project. You have the intelligent eye gates. Some of the ports have been selected for intelligent eye gates. Ports like Tinkan, Apapa, or Ne. They are like they've been selected to have an eye gate system where you can actually balance what was cleared in the port with what is arriving at the gates before it exits. At that point, or the eye gate as well, the key lock. So the key lock is supposed to be the electronic tracker that is placed, like the padlock, the e-padlock that is placed on for cargo tracking. It will also be validated. And with the eye gate, we're hoping that we can help Nigeria Port Authority to decongest the port, meaning they will be able to submit the names of the driver coming into the port that is picking up a declaration, or sorry, a consignment that has been cleared. So without you putting the name of your driver or the truck number on your application when you're submitting your SGD, the likelihood for that vehicle getting into the port will be very, very slim. So you also have intelligent video surveillance as well. So they are hoping to keep our borders more secured and to ensure that we reduce smuggling routes by deploying these facilities or this equipment into the field. So there's a decision to be made, of course, on which type of gadget goes to the border stations, which one goes to the port, which one goes to the terminal. So all these are already been decided already. I think networking unit worked on some of those decisions. The geospatial unit also worked on some of those decisions as well. And of course, NII worked on the deployment of the scanners that is existing. So we are hoping that all this will come into shape before the end of the first 6 years. And we're already 2 years gone, or far gone into 2 years already by, which is well. We're hoping that we can move at a faster pace. Of course, it really depends on how we get right of way. As I said, we wrote the letter to MPA in January. We did not get feedback until last month for MPA. So you see, relationship with stakeholders also determine on some of these timelines as well. So next slide. Activities so far. Infrastructure has commenced already. As I said, some of you would have seen some of this being done in some of your commands. We actually have we've handed over 12 commands, and then Balabina site, which is under Apapa. But presently 8 commands have been worked on in terms of their CPCs, providing them with some of the consumables like diesel, basic renovations has been done, deployment of computer systems and everything has been done, and provision of internet has also been made. Unfortunately, the internet, of course, we cannot use it with the present system, but at least they have it in their command to do as they wish. Then you have the software is the development is on the way as well. CSE ABA has a lot to do on that aspect. You have contracts and subscriptions. We already have about 12 contracts and subscriptions licenses already under the name of Nigeria Customs Service. So that is one good thing about what we've done. Again, we are ensuring that everything that is being done under this agreement is already in the name of Nigeria Customs Service. So we don't wait until when they are going before we start transferring it to Nigeria Customs Service name. That's the picture of the project management office on the far right, should in case those of you that have not been there, at least now that you've seen it, the day you enter management quarters, you will know what the building looks like and you can find your way there. Who knows, one of us might be posted there very soon. Then in terms of capacity building, a lot of capacity building has been done. Funny enough, the 140 officers I put here are, this is an old figure because they just completed another 100 training for leadership and strategic planning for the ACs. So a lot of training is already unfolding, and I'm sure most of you will be called in to support or come and, either as a trainer or as a trainee in due course. So you see some of the logos there. You have Huawei, NewTek, you have Cross-Border XP, and you have Boya. So Boya logo here, Boya is actually the independent experts that you have. So, and the quality assurance is EMI. Boya is the independent expert, while EMI is our quality assurance team. Next slide, please. Marianne. Okay, so in terms of infrastructure design, what is going to be deployed before the end of the year is half of the data, the data center facility, and then the network, 1/4 of the network will be deployed. As I said, some of the network has already been set up in some 8 commands already, but the total they're going to deploy before the end of the year, of course, we can deploy more than 1/4 of it. And then we have 1/3 of the production storage will also be there, and then 1/4 of the RCC. So when you say 1/4, which means is either the RCC in corporate HQ might be the first to be deployed. So that alone will actually cover a lot of grounds. So this is the first deliverable for this year. And a lot of work is already on the way for this to be in place before the end of the year. Next slide. And I said 6 scanners are coming in before the end of the year. We have 1 mobile scanner coming, we have 1 gantry scanner, and we have 4 air scanners that are coming in before the end of the year. Next slide. So the benefits of the project, of course, we're hoping that we're going to have a very transparent way of working. We'll be able to ensure efficiency in terms of service delivery for the Nigeria Customs Service. And of course, the benefits that they're also promising to give us is the paperless technology, end-to-end control, of course, will be with Nigeria Customs Service. They are hoping that there will be little to gray areas in the, which means transparency, no gray areas in terms of imports. And then we have international standards. A lot has been going on in terms of international standards. People like Ozamere laid the groundwork for policies that they're supposed to develop in terms of cybersecurity. These are things that we don't actually have before that we are already putting in place today. So a lot of documentations. In fact, the cybersecurity team is going to participate in ECOWAS hackathon in the next few, led by CSC Jero, MJ. MJ is leading the team to go and participate in ECOWAS hackathon. They've been doing a lot of training at the PMO recently in order to prepare themselves and ensure that they are ready for it. So a lot of things are happening with officer and staff capacity building and in terms of ensuring that we are ready for taking over the system and also driving this project at the forefront, not just looking at what they're doing. The PMO, I can tell you that a lot of 1 stars CSE Ajara led a team of one-stars to ensure the full networking of the project management office. And a lot of one-stars actually got down to their knees, not caring about the uniform, and they were able to get a lot of work done. So in terms of managing the networking of the service, I can say, yes, we actually have a good team of networking officers right now that can actually take up the reins when some of these senior officers leave the service. So in terms of capacity building, they're really doing a lot in terms of working and ensuring that we become the Nigeria Customs Service that we want to see in the few years. Everybody is putting their hands on deck to ensure that that happens. Next slide, please. So we're also working not just in isolation, but we're working in line with the CGC's, what will I call it, Marianne?
Policy trust.
Policy trust, thank you. Innovation, collaboration, and communication. So in terms of innovation, as I said, the system design is already on the way. Infrastructure design is ready. We're already adopting new technologies, like we've adopted Geospatial. I'm sure a lot of people can pay visits. Since you are coming for exams, try and pay a visit to the PMO. I'm sure Abba will show you around the PMO. So we'll show you what we've been doing so far, and you can see some of the technologies that was deployed there. In terms of collaboration, a lot of stakeholders were already engaging them. We've engaged CBN already in terms of connectivity to the system. The banks were ensuring that their connectivity should be finalized in the coming week. We have terminal operators connectivity already. We have engaged some of the stakeholders in the meeting, hoping that we'll ensure full collaboration with them. And we're not just doing this without the public relation officers and the press. In terms of communication and getting awareness into the public, the PR unit has been doing a lot in terms of sensitization, sending out press release and everything in line with what is already being done and what has been done and what we intend to do. So we are really keying into the CGC's policy trust in order for us to ensure that we are not working in isolation of it. Next slide. So that's all. Thank you very much. And Marianne, thank you for helping out. Abba, thank you very much. And thank you to the wonderful listeners. I hope I've been able to increase your knowledge a bit about the NCS modernization project.
Yes, thank you so very much, CSE Buki. So without wasting much time, we'll just go straight to the question and answer session. I think Abba is supposed to coordinate this session. Ogaba, over to you, sir. Hello.
Yeah, thank you, Katio. Thank you, Buki. So the questions there we have, most of them I think has been answered by Ozamere, but I'll go through it again. I think the first question was asking why was the SPV changed from the former one to the new one? So I don't know, Buki, have you seen the answers there? Is it okay for you? Or do you want to elaborate more? Buki.
I think Buki has answered that one about the SPV change.
That was the first thing I said before. I told
Even
you
at the
that.
beginning of our presentation.
Yes, so I told you the reason why the SPV changed, because it was, we changed the name changed because the SPV was changed. And you now say, why did the SPV change? SPV, okay, so that is like a very, very plenty discussion, but the question remains that if Marianne, Abba, and I decide to open a company, and we said this is the condition, that by the time the person we are going to meet gives his own condition, if it's okay for me, because I'm bringing my money to the table here, Abba is bringing his money, Marianne is bringing her money. So the question remains that you only put your money in somewhere that you are sure of. Do you understand? So that the three of us were coming together to form an SPV. But if the terms and conditions that the guarantor is giving us is not sufficient, then we cannot really hold you to ransom and say, no, they cannot tell me that they can't force me to keep my money there. I can decide to change. So because the parties to the SPV change, so if three of us have come together before and we've agreed that we're going to be bearing OMA or AMO, You see, Abba, Marian, and Buki. By the time they are, if it does not work out and I pull out, you cannot still keep the name as AMO because the O there is for me. So you need to change the name. Immediately I pull out. So that is what happened. The name had to change. Thank you.
All right, thank
Next.
you. The next question is, how will the service repay the TMP? Are they taking a percentage of the revenue or is it a percentage of the sales?
Sorry. Yes. In terms of taking a percentage, so I was hoping that somebody would just slip away that part. So the question remains, the present way it is for you to pay them 45% of the cease. You see, it's a percentage. So they are collecting 45% of the cease. And I think how many percentage of the NES? They're collecting 25% of the NES, yes. So it's cease and NES.
25% of NES.
Yeah, 25% of NES. So they are collecting money from cease and NES together. But right now, we don't know what will happen in the nearest future because our act, the Federal Ministry of Finance is yet to tell us if the cease will still be in existence and if it will be useful for or usable for Nigeria Customs Service, considering you are already in the process of implementing your 4% already. So the reason behind cease is because our funding was not sufficient for Nigeria Customs Service. And the federal government, in their magnanimosity, decided to say, okay, be taking part of cease for whatever you want to do. So they gave us a certain percentage of cease to do some of the things we want to do. So most times when we have service provider and everything, because we don't have sufficient money, they remove it from that cease account to pay our service providers. So most contracts that are coming, when they are too large, you see CGC sending it to finance because he knows they have access to the cease and they can pay from there. But the question right now is, we don't know if the cease will still be available for us. So that's like a bone of contention and something beyond my pay grade right now. So we're leaving it to management to decide what is going to happen. If there's going to be an amendment of the concession agreement or an addendum to the concession agreement with regards to how the payments will be made, we have not decided. But for now, they are still paying them from the cease account.
I think that's all for the questions. Any more question or anybody wants to talk about any question or comment, please?
Sorry, let me come in. Buki, thank you very much for the presentation. Thank you very much for giving us this much detail on the projects. My point or my contribution here is that we're very glad to have people like you, people like Abba US working very closely with these guys, because the issue we had with our previous service providers, WF, were issues that relate to the fact that we don't have co-technical guys working with them, to monitor, the benefits, to monitor the implementation of some of those things. So they have the knife and the meat together, they do what they want to do, and they just push it to us. But I believe and hope with technical people like you working with these guys, you always put them on their toes, we always make sure they deliver all the deliverables, and we'll have a better future to move on. I would have loved to ask Marianne a question because I don't know if she's still there.
Very present,
Marianne,
sir.
I need to be seeing your face now. I cannot just ask questions without
Well, you're
seeing.
not showing your face now. Are you showing your face?
No, I need to see you. Sorry,
Oh, yeah, talk now.
it's an FA question I was thinking on this
Okay.
valuation. I was just, I'm very scared about FA questions. OBJ, you always have options to choose between. But when it comes to SA, it's something you have to crack your head and all of that. So the question sounds like
Okay.
this: has the technological advancements like beam valuation made manual valuation obsolete in Nigerian Customs Service? Has technological advancement, has ICT deployments like beam valuation made manual valuation obsolete in Nigerian Customs Service?
Well,
Or will
the
still
answer
have to continue to go with?
well, the answer I will tell you is yes. So this is why I'll give you yes as my answer. It's because the main purpose of the VIN valuation service is actually to eradicate manual valuation, right? So we didn't want an era where you have officers giving values for vehicles anymore. But you know, the reason why you still have a situation of 846 and the 000, that's standard VINs and non-standard VINs, is because we know that cars are manufactured in different countries of the world, right? And there are no so even in the World Palace, that's what you have. You have standard and non-standards, right? So you have cars coming from America with the 17 alphanumeric digits as the standard VINs. Then you have cars coming from Europe, Dubai, and China, for instance. They have some of them have 16 digits, some of them have different kinds of alphanumerics. Some of them might not even be 17. And then you also have a situation where there are different VIN databases in the world. So you actually don't have one VIN database that has all the VINs in the world. So it's based on the VIN database that you are subscribed to, that you are able to determine on your own system if this vehicle is standard and non-standard. So that's why we still have the situation of standards and non-standards. And so that we can still have a situation where valuation officers were not having to do carrying papers about and doing that, we created that E846 application. But as Buki has explained now, with the new UCMS, I'm sure you were hearing her throw the word around UCMS, is the Unified Customs Management System. We will not have a situation where you have 846 application independent of the customs clearance system. The reason why you have an 846 e-clearance system where 846 e-application system where an agent will still go and declare the goods, the vehicles is bringing in, valuation and give value, then he will now print the 846 approval, then now carry it to NICES to go and attach. It's because of the problems we have had with WebFontaine over the years, where WebFontaine refuses to integrate with other systems and applications that the service has been able to develop or subscribe to with other government agencies or other service providers. So you have systems being built in silos. So for instance, if we had a situation where the E846 application was integrated with NICES, you actually don't need anybody submitting printing any approval document in hard copy. Whatever valuation that the valuation officer is going to do will be on the NICES application. Do you understand? So it creates a system for the database of the NICES to be able to accommodate more VINs and register it on the back end, which was actually one of the major perks that WebFontaine sold to the service when they were going to deploy this. The whole idea was that the more VINs you have, right, on your system fits back into the VIN database that they are being using, so that database can have more VINs, so that by the time the system, NCS is using it, it recognizes these VINs as standard VINs, right? And so all the declarant needs to do is to impute the value, the transaction value. So yes, the whole idea of the VIN validation database is to eradicate manual valuation in the service. I hope I've been able to clear that.
That can be achieved with the new system, if I get you very clear, with the UC.
Yes, please. Yes. So those are one of the things, those are one of the bottlenecks and the issues with our current clearance procedure on our systems that we're trying to correct with the new system. So one of the major issues we have on NICES is the lack of integrations, right? Or limited integrations with other stakeholders, with other systems developed in-house, even by the service. But with this new system, this new system actually is leveraging on a lot of integrations. So existing systems that are available, we're just going to do integrations, improve them and do integrations, and even see better ways in which these systems can be better implemented and used for our clearance and internal processes.
Thank you very much, Yenga. And I think to justify that in terms of even valuation method, because we keep talking about database, it means that we're using the one that talked about either identical transaction, or similar transaction, because we're building up database of previous transactions, previous importations, to see how we can relate it with current importations and all of that. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you. Katio, please, can you? Katio?
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, thank you. Thank you. So, in the absence of any other question, I want to assume that the lectures from Marianne and Buki is well delivered and very well understood. Of course, the discussion can continue on the platform. They are very much available on the platform there too. ABBA US is there too to take on all the other questions that want to come up. So we want to say thank you so very much. And call on Bakindo. Bakindo, are you there? Hello, Bakindo. Okay. On behalf of the participants, we want to say thank you so very much for taking your time out to give us this very detailed presentation. I'm sure we are very much more enlightened about customs procedures and the NCS modernization process now more than ever before. Really appreciate you. Thank you so very much, and God bless. So, like I said, the discussion will continue on the platform. Any other questions will be welcome. Thank you, and have a lovely night.